The first case study, a very lengthy case study. Look at this is the game that UPSC plays. Look at the so-called the length of the first question in case study. This is one slide, this is question, and here they ask 3 slides. They have asked the question and 3 questions they have asked for 20 marks. Now what you have to do, you have to be quick. Let's look at the questions that they are asking. They are asking you discuss the ethical issues involved in the case, critically examine the options available, which of the above would be the most appropriate for Prabhat and why. Right? Now this type of questions are similar. What are the ethical issues that were involved? Write your options and write your solution, or which solution do you think is the fit one. Right? So the question is same, but the case study we have to understand whether we have seen this at some point or not. Prabhat was working as a vice president at Sterling Electrical Limited, a reputed multinational company. But presently the company was passing through difficult times as the sales were continuously slowing downward trend in the last 2 quarters. His division, which hitherto has been a major revenue contributor to the company's financial health, was now desperately trying to procure some big government's order for them, but their best efforts did not yield any positive success or breakthrough. Right. Next, his was a professional company, and his local bosses were under pressure from their London-based head office to show some positive results. In the last performance review meeting taken by the executive director, Indian head. In the last performance review meeting taken by an Indian director, he was reprimanded for his poor performance. He assured them that his division is working on a social contract from the Ministry of Defence for a secret installation near Gwalior, and tender is being submitted shortly. Right. So next one. He was under extreme pressure and he was deeply perturbed. Right? Perturbed. Okay. What aggravated the situation further was a warning from the top that if the deal is not clinched in favor of the company, his division might have to be closed and he may have to quit the lucrative job. Okay, good. There was another dimension which was causing him deep mental problem and agony. This pertained to his personal precarious financial health. Right? Personally also this fellow is having some problems. Okay. He was a single earner of the family with 2 college-going children and old ailing mother. Right. The heavy expenditure on education and medical was causing a big strain to his monthly pay pocket. Regular EMI for a housing loan was taken from bank bank was unavoidable, and default would render him liable for severe legal action. So on one side, his professional problem, he has personal problem also. Feeling anxiety, yeah. So he is having both problems, right? Professional problem and personal problem. In the above backdrop, he was hoping for some miracle to happen. There was sudden turn of events. His secretary informed that a gentleman, Subhash Verma, wanted to meet him and he was interested in the position of manager, which was to be filled in by him in the company. He further brought to his notice that his curriculum vitae has been received through the Office of Minister of Defence. Now, Subhash Verma. Right. During interview of the candidate, Subhash Verma, he found him technically sound, resourceful, experienced marketer. He seemed to be well conversant with the tendering procedures and having knack of follow-up and liaising in this regard. Very good. This fellow is having some knowledge about getting contracts. Right. Prabhat felt that he was better choice than the rest of the candidates who were recently interviewed by him. Felt that he was better choice in a few days. Good. Subhash Verma also indicated that he was in the possession of the copies of the old documents that the Unique Electrons Limited would be submitting the next day to the Defence Ministry for their tender. Okay, this fellow knows about other company also. He offered to hand over those documents subject to his employment in the company on suitable terms and conditions. He made it clear that in the process, the Sterling Electrical Limited could outbid their rival company and get the bid and hefty Defense Ministry order. He indicated that it will be a win-win situation for both, which means Sterling Electric Company could outbid their rival company. This is their company. Good. Prabhat was absolutely stunned. It was a mixed feeling of shock and thrill. He was uncomfortable and perspiring. If accepted, all his problems would vanish instantly, and he may be rewarded for securing that much awaited tender and thereby boosting company sales and financial health. He was in a fix as to future course of action. He was wonderstruck at the guts of Subhash Verma in having surreptitiously removing his own company papers and offering to the rival company for a job. Being an experienced person, he was examining the pros and cons of the proposal situation, and he asked him to come the next day. Right? Very good case study. Now, first thing is, by looking at this case study, what immediately you have to get is, you have to link to which aspect this case study is present. This aspect is ethics in personal life, private life, professional life, ethics in corporate governance. Now, the thing is, discuss the ethical issues involved in this case. Now, this something is ethics in personal, private, and professional life is your first topic in the syllabus. Ethics and human interface, right? Ethics and human interface. Just now I said ethics at your individually, in family levels, in professional level. Now discuss the ethical issues that is involved in the case. The ethical issues is, one is the so-called character of that Subhash Verma is under threat. Why? If I give job to Subhash Verma, tomorrow he might steal my own company documents and he might be presenting it to the so-called other authorities. That is the first thing. The second ethical issue is, my professional life is a threat, my personal life is a threat, my private life is a threat. Right? Because my private life, what is private life? Life with family and the so-called relatives. That is under threat because already I have two school-going children, college-going children, and I have an ailing mother. That is what they have given. Right? And I have my dues also. At the same time, I have professional problems also. So there are at least three critical issues. The fourth one is the problem with this fellow. If I allot him, how it is going to get. Now, the fourth one is conscience problem. Why conscience problem? This fellow has stolen some others and you are not going through the so-called proper channel. So, by knowing the others case, the so-called auctioning system, auctioning price, this fellow has compromised it, which means you are not going in the professional way also. So, these are the ethical issues. Critically examine the options available to Prabhat in this above case study. Now, what are the options that is? Now, what are the options that you have? You have either you can accept Prabhash or Subhash, whoever is there, that fellow Subhash, right? What are the pros and what are the cons? You can reject his application. You can accept his application provided that you maintain a proper guard on this fellow, right? These are the three things that you do, or you can write some other things that will be known to you. Now, which of the above options would be appropriate for Prabhat and why? Why that is appropriate. Now, what you will do, look at this. The question is here, ethics in private and public relationship. A fellow who doesn't have ethics in private life can never have ethics in public life. That is very, very important. Remember, నాకు ప్రైవేట్ లైఫ్లో ఎథిక్స్ లేనప్పుడు పబ్లిక్ లైఫ్లో ఎథిక్స్ ఉండడం కల్లా రైట్ మొక్కై వంగనదే మారు వంగన అనేసి రైట్ ఇఫ్ ఐ అలాట్ దట్ ఫెలో ఇఫ్ ఐ am taking that fellow he might cause damage and reputation to my company further. One thing is why UPSC has given all these statements. Now you are facing financial crisis from the last few days. It is testing your character now, whether you fall for this, whether you appoint. Now, one key thing that we have to take is you are not going to appoint him, because a person who has cheated will cheat you also. Now, look at this. Hitherto, you have been a major revenue contributor. You are a revenue contributor, but because of the circumstances, today you are unable to do it. So what you will do is, you don't take that fellow, or even if you take that fellow, keep an eye on him. The first step is, don't take that fellow. The second step is, if you are accepting that Subhash, keep a constant vigil. Don't give him proper position until your work is done. Use him, right? That is called, as an administrator, you can use it. Why? Because this fellow is having experience. Now he is also saying that if you give me the offer, I will give it to you. Tomorrow, what if something is going to happen? Tomorrow, this is like give and take, right? So, what is the most appropriate action? The most appropriate action in this case study is, you can go with two logics. I will appoint him, but I will not give him some secret information, or I will keep him an eye. But before that, the most appropriate answer would be, I don't accept him into my company. Because a person who doesn't have ethics in private life, he will never have ethics in public life. This is as simple as this, right? So this is the thing. Now look at the question and the answer that they asked. It seems to be very large question, but the answer is simple. Discuss the ethical issues that is involved. Ethical issues will be only from your syllabus itself. What are the syllabus? It is testing your integrity, it is testing your aptitude, it is testing your private life ethics, public life ethics, these things it is testing, and it is also testing whether during the times of stress you are going to lose your values or not. It is testing your character, right? Now all these things UPSC ఎందుకు ఫ్రేమ్ చేసిందంటే వాంటెడ్ గా ఫ్రేమ్ చేసింది ఈ క్వశ్చన్. Why? Now in when you become civil servant, if you are pushed into this situation, how will you react, right? నువ్వు ఆపర్చునిటిస్టిక్ పర్సనా లేకపోతే వాల్యూ ఉండే పర్సన్ అనేది టెస్ట్ చేస్తుంది. కనుక వాల్యూ ఉండే పర్సన్ లాగానే ప్రొజెక్ట్ చేయాలి. సో హౌ యూ ప్రొజెక్ట్ దట్? యూ ప్రొజెక్ట్ దట్ బై బీయింగ్ సేయింగ్ దట్ ఐ వోంట్ యాక్సెప్ట్ దిస్ ఫెలో, right? So that is one thing. So critically examine the options. You can write 3 or 4 options, but by the end, I won't accept this fellow because I never entertain a fellow who is having low values in the so-called public life, and he might bring the same reputation. Today he might bring me some amount or some contract, but tomorrow he might cause a greater damage which cannot be recovered in the coming days, right? You can write these type of things and you can substantiate your answer. That is what at least I think we can approach this question. If you have any other things, that is completely fine, but justify why you are taking that action. Justify it. Now ethics, there is nothing called whatever I say is right or whatever you say is right. It is justification which decides. That is what my justification would be. So this is ethics in public and private life. Link with the subject and you'll get the answer. Ramesh is State Civil Services Officer. You can also write this with the dimensions of ethics, saying that ethics means are as important as to the ends as Gandhiji says. So that makes your question somewhat realistic. Ramesh is State Civil Services Officer who got the opportunity of getting posted to the capital of a border state after rendering 20 years of service. Ramesh's mother has recently been detected cancer and has been admitted in the leading cancer hospital of the city. His 2 adolescent children have also got admitted in one of the best public schools of the town. After settling down in his appointment as the director in the Home Department of the state, Ramesh got confidential report through intelligence sources that illegal migrants are infiltrating in the state from the neighboring country. He decided to personally carry out surprise checks of the border post along with the Home Department team. To his surprise, he caught red-handed 2 families of 12 members infiltrated with the connivance of the security personnel at the border post, which means they got colluded with the so-called security personnel and they got in. On further inquiry and investigation, it was found that after the migrants from neighboring country infiltrate, their documentation like Aadhaar card, ration card, voter card are also forged and they are made to settle down in a particular area of the state. Ramesh prepared the detailed and comprehensive report and submitted to the Additional Secretary of the state. However, he has summoned by the Additional Home Secretary after a week and was instructed to withdraw the report. The Additional Home Secretary informed Ramesh that the report submitted by him has not been appreciated by the higher authorities. He further cautioned him that if he fails to withdraw the confidential report, he will not only be posted out of the prestigious appointment from the state capital, but his further promotion, which is in view in the future, will also get in jeopardy. So it is asking again whether you are going to compromise your values by giving something called, by looking at your jobs, by looking at your career prospects. What are the options available to Ramesh as the director of the Home Department of the bordering state? Now, as a director of your Home Department, so what is the thing that you get? The additional Home Secretary is asking you to withdraw, but you have given a clear-cut report. Now it is something which is threatening the border security and it is testing your professional ethics. In profession, you should always give importance. In public life, you should always give importance to the so-called public values. The interests of public should be first rather than your private interests. Either your mother is suffering, whether your children are in a good school or not, irrespective of that, keep this aside because your position is now in the public sphere. So give importance to the public sphere. So one thing is, these things will wipe out, right? Further promotions, these things will wipe out. Wherever you go, you have to protect and you have to do your duty perfectly. Now, the second thing is, the option that you have is, now he is additional Home Secretary who is creating trouble. Ask the additional Home Secretary to give that in writing, right? Otherwise, don't do that work. You, if the additional secretary, Home Secretary is pressuring him, go to the next subordinate, next super boss, right? Next in the hierarchy, right? You can go to the secretary and you can aid them, right? This is what you can do as the so-called officer. So you can follow code of conduct, code of professional ethics, and if your superior is not willing or not making you to work, ask your superior to do that in writing and take that to the next hierarchy. This is the option that you will be having, right? So this is how it can be done. What option should Ramesh adapt and why? What option Ramesh should adapt? Ramesh should adapt this option only because this is in line with the so-called code of professional ethics, the code of services. And it is something like not only legality it is true, but also morally also he is doing his duty. Critically evaluate each options. Again, they are asking here itself you will evaluate, right? What are the options? 1, 2, 3, 4. Simple. What option should Ramesh adapt and why? Critically evaluate each option. Write the pros of each and one. What are the options? He can 4 or 5 options. He can be silent from doing that. He can follow the additional secretary, do the positives and negatives of it. He cannot follow that additional secretary, right? He will be stubborn or going to the authorities. 3 options at least you can write. What are the ethical dilemmas being faced by Ramesh? The ethical dilemmas is conflict of interest. What is the conflict of interest? At one side, I have my public life, on the other side, I have my private life. The second ethical dilemma is the so-called issue from the authority itself. Issue from the authority. What is that authority? Breaking the command of my officer itself is an ethical dilemma. So you are becoming you are not listening to your superior, right? You are breaking the superior rule. As a result, at times it feels that okay, you are breaking your superior or you are not listening to the superior. So this is some ethical dilemma that you will be facing. What policy measures should you suggest to combat the menace of infiltration of illegal migrants from the neighboring country? Best example is what Indian government has done in the place of Rohingyas. Rohingyas, they have taken to a place, they have provided the so-called security to that people. The first thing is you protect the people who have infiltrated. In the next stage, make sure that people are not infiltrating into your country. Right, you can write this. So 5 questions, they are 20 marker, each is for 4 marks, very simple to write. Right, this is again a very easy question, but always stand by ethical value itself. The Supreme Court has banned mining in the Aravalli Hills. Recent example, right? To stop degradation of the forest cover and to maintain ecological balance. However, the stone mining was still prevalent in the border district of the affected state with connivance means with support of certain corrupt forest officials and politicians. Young and dynamic SP who was recently posted in the affected district promised to himself to stop this menace. In one of his surprise checks with his team, he found loaded truck with the store trying to escape the mining area. He tried to stop the truck, but the truck driver overran the police officer, killing him on the spot, and thereafter managed to flee. This is the thing which has happened in a place, right? This is one SP was killed like this. Way back in 2016, one SP was killed in this manner. At that point of time, they asked a similar question. A clear example, a thing which has happened in public life, they have given this. He tried to stop the truck, but the truck driver overran the police officer, killing him on the spot, and thereafter managed to flee. Police filed FIR, but no breakthrough was achieved in the case for almost 3 months. Ashok, who was the investigative journalist working with the leading TV channel, Sumoto, started to investigate the case. Within 1 month, Ashok got breakthrough by interacting with the local people, stone mining mafia, and government officials. He prepared his investigative story and presented to the CMD of the TV channel. He exposed in his investigative report the complete nexus of stone mafia working with blessings of the so-called corrupt police and civil officials and politicians. The politician who was involved in the mafia was no one else but local MLA, who was considered to be very close to the Chief Minister of the state. After going through the investigative report, the CMD advised Ashok to drop the idea of making the story public through electronic media. He informed that the local MLA was not only the relative of the owner of the TV channel, but also had unofficially 20% share in the channel. The CMD further informed Ashok that his further promotion and hike in the pay will be taken care of in addition to the soft loan of 10 lakhs which he has taken from the TV channel for his son's chronic disease will be suitably adjusted if he hands over the investigative report to him. Again, the same thing. It is testing about your integrity in your personal and professional life. Right, same thing. Second case and start case more or less the same. What are the options available with Ashok to cope up with the situation? The one option is giving up, following the advice and being silent. The other option is what he can do. Anyways, the local officials are corrupt. So what he can do, he can air it to the media by using some electronic platforms, or he can use this to the other channels and they can aid this story. Or what he can do, he can write secretly to the higher officials, which is happening maybe to the governor. If Chief Minister is the one, they can go for the governor or any other higher authorities. He can write this, or he can air it in the public itself. So write 3 or 4. The best thing is 5 questions are there, 4 marks will be there, write 4 options, it is going to be enough. Critically evaluate, examine each options identified by Ashok. Okay, what are the ethical issues? Again, the same question. Ethical issues is conflict of interest, professional values, private values. Now, threat to the so-called life, which is very important. The next one is financial trouble that it might be getting him if he is reporting it. Now, his concerns will be opposing if he is not going through that, right? So, these things will be there. What options do you think would be most appropriate for Ashok to adapt, and why? In my case, I say that this fellow can do one thing, that is called he can do report it to the so-called the senior officials inside the police. That is called the central police team. If the state police team is really in access, he can write it, or he can show it to the so-called executive heads, because the police officer is an executive head. Go and support it to the executive head, who is the executive head in the state, to the governor and to the president of India. They can write and they can show it, rather than if the political bosses are corrupt, that doesn't mean that everyone is corrupt, right? In the above scenario, what type of training do you suggest for police officers posted to such districts where stone mining illegal activities are rampant? Absolutely, going and standing before a truck shows your heroism, but that doesn't mean that you are having emotional intelligence, right? What is the emotional intelligence? What if the truck driver goes on you? Simple thing. So the thing is, you should have emotional intelligence along with your courage. That is most important. So you have to try. What type of training would you suggest for police officers posting in such districts with stone mining illegal activities were rampant? So what are the types of, you have to train them, what is the practical way to go ahead with? Say for example, if you are going for the so-called field studies, go with a team, right? Be ready with the team always. The second thing is, take action not on the so-called people who are doing the work. Rather, go ahead after the nexus. Try to go after the nexus, try to break that nexus by forming a good team. This was a previous year question. By forming a good team of the so-called ethical officers, you can tackle this problem, right? And then you have to take the support of people like Ashok. Why? Media plays a very crucial role in exposing these type of things, and then the officer has to be quite strict. So, but the thing is, you have to be emotionally strong in these type of situations. You cannot go and stand before a truck, right? That is the thing. You have done MBA from a reputed institution 3 years back, but could not get a campus placement due to COVID-19 generated recession. However, after a lot of persuasion and a series of competitive tests, including written and interview, you managed to get a job in leading shoe company. You have aged parents who are dependent and staying with you. You are recently got married after getting this decent job. You are allotted the inspection section, which is responsible for clearing the final report, final product. In the first 1 year, you learned your job very well and was appreciated for your performance by the management. The company is doing good business for last 5 years in domestic market, and this year it is decided even to export to the countries like Europe and Gulf countries. However, one large consignment to Europe was rejected by the inspecting team due to certain food quality and was sent back. The top management ordered that I-bid consignment to be cleared for the domestic market. As a part of inspecting team, we observed the glaring food quality and brought to the knowledge of the team commander. However, the top management advised all the members of the team to overlook these defects as the management cannot bear such huge loss. Rest of the team members expect to promptly sign and cleared the consignment for domestic market, overlooking the glaring defects. You again brought to the knowledge of the team commander that such consignment, if cleared even for domestic market, will tarnish the image and reputation of the company and will be counterproductive in the long run. However, you are further advised by the top management that if you do not clear the consignment, the company will not hesitate to terminate you from services citing certain innocuous reasons. Understanding under the given conditions what are the options available to your member as an inspecting team, the option is not giving permission at all. You should not. One thing is, options are again the same thing. Give permission, don't give the permission, take it to the higher authorities. Take it to the higher authorities and ask their suggestions. Higher authorities, right? And report it. Or you can act as a whistleblower also in this case, and you can report this to a so-called media or to the so-called ministry which is looking after the so-called consumer affairs. You can do these things also. Critically evaluate. Again, you will evaluate what are the pros and cons in each. What options do you adapt? What options do you adapt? At any case, don't look at your personal benefit. Look at the so-called I adapt. I never sign this. I never sign this. That should be your goal. Why you don't sign this? Because it is against my conscience. It is against my professional ethics. It is against my conduct code of service. It is against the so-called the brand building of the company. Today, if you are looking at the losses that the consignment is going to get, if tomorrow if there is a bad image, the trust once is lost, it cannot be rebuilt back, right? ఏముంది ఒక కన్సైన్మెంట్ పోతే పోయింది ఒకసారి ట్రస్ట్ పోతే you cannot build it back. So it takes years to build back that trust. As a result, you have to write these things and you say that I will not do it. So in ethics, always take a decision which is highly ethical. నాకు ప్రాబ్లం ఉంది, మా ఇంట్లో ప్రాబ్లం ఉంది, right? You don't think about these things, right? Ethically, at least on the paper. What are the ethical dilemmas being faced by you? Ethical dilemmas, again the same thing. One thing is, my superior fellow is saying me to clear this, but my mind is not saying, right? These things you can write. Ethical dilemmas. So far they asked what are the ethical issues. Now they are asking what are the ethical dilemmas. Ethical dilemmas means cognitive dissonance, conflict of interest, these things, right? You can write these type of things. What can be the consequences of overlooking the observations raised by the inspecting team? The consequences is even the inspecting team along with the officer will go out someday if the brand is not getting, if the brand is getting a reputed ill fame, right? నేనే కాదు నాతో పాటు నా టీం అంతా కూడా బయటికి పోతుంది ఎప్పుడో, right? So this is the thing that you can write. Rakesh was working as a joint commissioner in transport department of the city. As a part of his job profile, among others, he was entrusted with the task of overseeing the control and functioning of the city transport department. A case of strike by the drivers Union of Cities Transport Department over the issue of compensation to a driver who died on duty while driving the bus came up before him for the decision in the matter. So he was a joint commissioner in Transport Department. He gathered that the driver was flying bus number 528, which passed through busy and congested roads in the city. It so happened that near an intersection where there was an accident involving the bus and a car driven by a middle-aged man. It was found that there was an altercation between the driver and the cab driver. Heated arguments between them led to fight, and the driver gave him a blow. Lot of passerbys had gathered and tried to intervene, but without success. Eventually, both of them were badly injured and profusely bleeded and were taken to the nearby hospital. The driver succumbed to the injuries and could not be saved. The middle-aged driver's condition was also critical, but after a day he recovered and was discharged. Adrustam. Police had immediately come at the spot of the accident. Right. Police had immediately come at the spot of accident and FIR was registered. Police investigation revealed that the quarrel in question was started by the bus driver and he has resorted to physical violence. Some relief to this one. There was exchange of blows between them. Next, the City Transport Department management is considering of not giving any extra compensation to the driver's deceased family. The family is very aggrieved, depressed and agitated against the discriminatory and non-sympathetic approach of the City Transport Department management. The bus driver was 52 years old, was survived by his wife and 2 school-going children. Why they are asking 2 school-going children? Look at all the options they are giving. They have children, they have children, they have children. Maybe because of COVID-19 impact, right? He was the sole earner of the family. The City Transport Department Workers Union took up this case and found no favorable response when the management decided to go on strike. The union's demand was twofold. First was full extra compensation as given to other drivers who died on duty. The second, employment to one family member. The strike continued for 10 days and the deadlock remains. What are the options available to Ramesh to meet the situation? Again, the case itself is giving you some options. Do the compensation to the family and agree to the so-called demands of the so-called the drivers. The second one is going with the management decision itself, the City Transport Department management itself. The third one is taking this to the so-called department once again. They have to speak about the so-called, I will be going back to the so-called City Transport Department management because the strike, if it is going to further proceed, just like it has happened in Telangana 2 years back, right? If RTC drivers are making some strike, then it is going to use loss for the management. The fourth situation is asking the management and the so-called team members to voluntarily do some funding, collect some funds and give it to the family. Now, these are the options. Now, what is the critical examine each option that is identified, Rakesh? What is the ethical dilemma? One ethical dilemma is whether that is a battle or not, the fellow has lost now. The fellow being is not there. Now, this is something which is a grave loss. Unlike your presence, this is a grave loss. Now, the family sole breadwinner was lost. Hence, here, there is no need to follow just bureaucratic attitude. It could be somewhat democratic attitude also. What is democratic attitude? Yes, the problem has been with this fellow. He has failed to conduct, but still you can extend some help out of context here because he is survived by his wife and 2 school-going children. So you can ask your management to come down a little bit and provide some compensation. And what is the compensation? Not full extra compensation. Why? If you give full extra compensation, tomorrow the other fellow, if they do the same thing by breaking the rules, if they are going to be in trouble, again they will ask the same thing. So in order to solve this problem, don't give full amount, at least give some little amount, but don't give the so-called second employment in the family. Why? He is a driver, right? If you want to give a family member that post, they have to drive. Otherwise, that will be a problem. The so-called transport department requires some skill, right? You cannot give this, at least give this. At least fulfill one objective so that the other objective might not be fulfilled, right? At that point of time, then both fellows will come. This is like emotional intelligence, tackling emotional intelligence, tackling the problem with emotional intelligence. On one side, they were emotionally hurt, pacify them by going with utilitarian approach. What our Yogi Adityanath did 2 days back, right? What they did that the 2 children who were, the 2 girls who were hanged to death after committing sexual assault, right? The government has given 25 lakhs rupees along with the so-called a farm, along with the so-called a government job, right? Why? This is to pacify the struggle. This is to pacify the struggle. Hence, what is the action that you can take is, as the loss is irreparable, you can go for a utilitarian approach by giving some compensation, increasing compensation, at least solving one demand and keeping the other demand at bay. Because you can talk to the driver saying that it requires some skill for this, right? To drive the so-called car or the bike, bus. What course of action would Rakesh adapt to diffuse the above situation? He has to be emotionally intelligent. He has to strike a deal between the so-called workers as well as the management. This will be a better option. If we were in that place, we will consider giving this option, right? You are appointed as an officer heading the section in Environmental Pollution Control Board to ensure compliance and its follow-up. In that region, there were large number of small and medium industries which had been granted clearance. You learned that these industries provided employment to many migrant workers. Most of the industrial units have got environmental clearance certificate in their possession. The environmental clearance seeks to curb industries and projects that supposedly hamper the environment and living species in the region. But in practice, most of these units remain polluting units in several ways like air, water, soil. As such, local population encountered persistent health problems. On one side, it is giving employment, but other side, it is harming the health, right? Right? It is like establishing one pawn shop and making people to have pawn for free and going to the so-called hospitalization. It was confirmed that majority of the industries were violating environmental compliances. We issued notice to all the industrial units to apply for fresh environmental clearance certificate for the competent authority. However, your action met with hostile response from the sections of the industrial units, other vested interest persons, and sections of the local politicians. The workers also became very hostile to you as they felt that your action would lead to the closure of these industrial units, and the resultant unemployment will lead to insecurity and uncertainty in their livelihood. Many owners of the industries approached you with the plea that you should not initiate harsh action as it would compel them to close their units and cause huge financial loss. Shortage of their products in the market. This would obviously add to the sufferings of the laborers and consumers alike. Right? The labor union also sent you representation requesting the closure. The labor union also sent you representation requesting against the so-called closure of the units. You simultaneously started receiving threats from unknown concerns. Threats nothing. You are an officer. Don't fear from threats, but this is something which you have to look on. You, however, received support from some of your colleagues who advised you to act freely to ensure environmental compliance. Local NGOs also came to your support and they demanded the closure of the polluting units immediately. Now, don't bother about this. This is also an extreme step. Closing immediately makes people to fall on the road. What are the options available to you under these conditions? The options available that is to go ahead with your action, to not go ahead with your action, or taking a middle path. What is the middle path? Giving some time, reasonable time for the so-called these industrialists to bring back their companies to fall in line, right? They have to fall in line with the norms, and then if after giving some time, if they are not following, taking some stringent actions. It will be disconnected within less than 1 minute. I'm going to connect you again, right? We'll finish this after that connection and continue in that session. Ravali, write answers for these questions, okay? You try to write within 3 hours. I didn't tell your name.